So when the child is born, they come with a physical body. We see that body, but that body is not actually ready to go. It takes quite a while. It's quite obvious. The child, we see developing that physical body, and it needs time. And it takes actually 7 years for these maturative forces to do their work. So the body has all the organs, but these organs aren't actually fully developed. They take around 7 years to develop. So I'm talking the lungs, the heart, the brain, the liver, the metabolic system, circulatory system, the whole system, the nervous system. It's all developing in those 7 years of life. And as educators, the most important thing to do is not to disturb that work. This is the most important work, because that body they're going to have for the rest of their lives. So we want to make sure it forms as it should do. So we allow those maturative forces to work within the body and to fully develop it. And when it's fully developed, there are those physical signals that as educators in the Waldorf pedagogy, there are certain signs to show when that body has done its work and then is ready for the second part of the education. And this we see generally around 6 years of age, 6.5, teeth start falling out. The milk teeth start falling out. And this is a strong sign that something is really happening within the body. There's also doctors, they check to see if the children can do this movement and touch their ears, that the limbs are a certain length. And that also gives information that the child has concluded that first important developmental stage, which is that of the physical. The first 7 years, the education is totally orientated towards the body. The child needs to be able to master that body. To master means to be able to possess it, to really get inside of it. It's almost like it's a suit that you have to fit into. And I've worked with adults and I've seen so many adults, unfortunately, live an experience that their body doesn't fit that well. It's almost like they're a soul that's in this body that is not their home. And that has a lot to do with the experiences that that person had in their first 7 years of life, because it takes time to fully enter into that body, to feel it your own, to really possess it. So it's this foundational stage that it's fundamental to not rush. It lasts such a short time. We forget that it's so short. We're talking 6 years, 6.5, 7. We cannot rush that foundational stage, because it's the child's structuring for life. And as I said before, we can really see within the body when that process has been rushed. You may see as adults lacking confidence, that anxiety, that fear, sadness, anger. It all lives in the body, and we bring it into adulthood. That body is shaped through those experiences, predominantly in the first 7 years. Also, the second year cycle leaves its signs, as it were. But the first 7 years, because they're the most plastic, because the body is still forming, really becomes so ingrained that it's in your posture. Breathing is also an element to observe, because it's how we breathe gives us a lot of information. If we try, how do you all breathe? Some people think breathing is quite a spontaneous thing, and it is, but it's also something we can consciously control and maybe not even be aware that we're breathing, not even think about it. But if we take a moment to see how we're breathing. For example, if we breathe in deeply, do we feel our chest expand or our abdomen expand? It's a very different experience if we're feeling the chest expand or the abdomen expand. I'll just leave you for 10 seconds to be conscious of your breathing. This is also an indication of the education we've received and the experiences we have or we've had. And this reveals itself in breathing. It also contributes to the way we feel about ourselves, how we feel about other people, the world, and how we feel goes towards how we think. Because how we think and how we feel, there are two different faculties. Our work is to align them, but if we don't feel good, then our thinking also has a similar tendency. If we feel that we can't breathe very well, and maybe we feel like the world is coming in, it's just kind of too much to bear. So it's that thinking that is from our feeling. And it's this feeling which contributes how we think, which will then ultimately dictate how we act in the world. So they're all connected: feeling, thinking, and the acting, the willing. And these are three faculties that ideally need and want to be educated. In pedagogy, we talk a lot about time. We just looked at the breathing. We talk about space. As we know, time and space are related, hence Einstein's theory of relativity. And time is represented through change, it's through cycles, it's expressed in rhythms. Through an objective structure, we see this time move through this rhythm, which is the universal law and rhythm. I don't know if you've ever noticed that it's just such a mathematical perfection. And we see this in this simple setting and rising of the sun. This rhythm is everywhere. It's in our breathing, it's in our heartbeat. It forms the foundation of life. Rhythm is a repetition, and it's in this repetition, thankfully, that it repeats. Life can be born. So life is born through rhythm. So rhythm is absolutely fundamental. This should be the pillar of education, because everything is based on it. Because without rhythm, there is no life. And if we don't have a healthy rhythm, we generally don't have a healthy life. So it's very, connected. The mastery of time. This is also an art in itself to master. A sense of time, which ultimately, having a sense of time will lead to having a healthy perception of the self. In our pedagogy, in the Steiner-Waldorf pedagogy, the core is to bring the intelligence of the child to this relationship with the universal intelligence, which expresses itself in space over time. When I speak about space, I don't mean space that's up there, but what space actually is everything from here, so the earth, to the cosmos, and that is space. So it's everywhere. So we see this expression of time, like I said before, in the rising and the setting of the sun, in the alternation of the day and the night, and the waxing and the waning of the moon, in the cycles, in the seasons. It's there. It's very obvious to us as adults. But to have this awareness of life, to have this knowledge of life, having this sense of time to know life, we must remain in relation to it. And doing so, to be able to do so, we need to learn to see and make these connections, to see how life actually operates, not by taking it apart, but actually to simply observe it. And this takes time. To observe takes time. It's something you can't rush. Otherwise, it's just partial. So to take time to fully enter into the experience, and to fully enter into the experience, the child first needs to get into their body, because that body is going to accompany them for their whole life. So we don't want to rush that experience of coming into the body. Like I said before, it's a very short time, 6-7 years, and that's it. I repeatedly mention this importance of movement and the body, because within it moves something. Moves this faculty, which is the faculty of will. Faculty of will lives in the body and moves through the body. So it's actually exercised through the physical body. It moves when we move. So we need to educate this movement to, over time, educate the will. As we see, there's some children that have that faculty well ingrained. Some children don't have it. There's also this element of different characteristics, temperaments. But even if a child has lots of will, you know, that child that wants to do so many things, it needs to be directed. Or if there is a lack of it, that movement to activate this faculty. So every child is totally different. And this is their intelligence. Their intelligence is moved through the body, through movement. It moves when they learn to perceive, when they observe, when they see, when they, over time, learn to understand. And this takes time. We cannot rush it. We can't instruct it to give instructions. They have to experience it. I'm repeating a lot, but this is an embodiment also of the pedagogy, because it's we work with rhythm and repetition, and it's through this repetition and through this rhythm that it starts to become, we start to breathe in, it becomes part of us. What I'm talking about is very basic knowledge, and it's so basic and so simple and so obvious. And it's that being so obvious that it just kind of passes us by. I'm not wanting to say that's the case here, but the fact is the most obvious things seem to just go past. It's quite interesting. It's really interesting. Well, I find it interesting. So the education within the child is this wanting, this need to fit into the body and to really learn about the environment that the child finds themselves in. We're adults, you know, we're quite aware how things are. We generally, when we become parents, we may be in our late 20s, 30s, 40s. We're used to the nature. These children really want that time to really understand it for themselves. And they don't actually want the explanations. They want to have the experience, and that the answers within them, they want to explore and to discover. Because if somebody gives you already all the answers, it takes away that interest of discovery. So to really leave the child to interact in their own way, and for them to discover more about their environment and about themselves. So we allow your child to participate in these rhythms, in these cycles, with these festivities that we have throughout the year, and the ancient festivities which are connected to the cycles of the year. Children connect to rhythm on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and this is all part of the education that is the Steiner-Waldorf pedagogy. And this we will go into more detail in our second talk that Lucia Dimarco will be will be giving us. So I won't be going too much into this area. We will look at this in our second talk. So to allow children to simply enter into this relationship, this innate wisdom that is embedded in nature. Let children connect with the interiority of the world that unfolds in rhythms. As adults, we could also learn a lot from this. So children are potentially our best educators because they can do it quite naturally. They could spend hours looking at something and discovering and seeing over time how things unfold. And that is potential life learning, where this outer rhythm, this experience of outer rhythm over time becomes the inner rhythm, which will ultimately create and be the structure that we bring into our adult life. So how many of us feel or could say that they have a healthy rhythm? What is your relationship to rhythm? Do we have a good rhythm? Are we in rhythm? Are we out of rhythm? If we're honest with ourselves, it's a good question to answer, to question. Maybe the answer doesn't come straight away, but it certainly is an indication of the relationship that we have with life. So direct the child's intelligence towards nature, to life, to engage with life, to not be separate from it. This is the key. So with the senses, with the whole body, and with the imagination. Imagination. This will be a key subject in the third talk. So I won't talk about too much about it because this will be more explored in our third talk. So allow this inquisitive mind to develop. Like I said, the first 7 years, the brain is forming. So much is developing, and a third of our brain actually develops through movement. So the more we move, the more intelligent we become. So inquisitive of mind, this being inquisitive actually goes to develop and educate attention, concentration. When children are enthusiastic about something, they're really learning about it. If children are not enthusiastic, I can assure you they're not learning very, very much. Or if they are, at a very superficial level, so superficial that over time it would just potentially just be lost. Because if it doesn't go deeply, and it goes deeply when the child is totally engaged, and when only then that memory will live within the child. Or if the memory is not a good memory, then that will live and develop over time with certain dynamics, which in many cases are unconscious memories that live within the experience, within the bodies, and then reveal themselves in adulthood. So what we do as educators is to remove any potential obstacle, or these obstacles would be to separate the child from having these experiences that we observe are the conditions and the environment that are what the children are actually needing for their development. So allow these children to play. And play, we mean many things. Could be to be run, to jump, to climb. And it's through this movement that we're learning, the children are learning about coordination, about balance, creating, activating the will to do, this belief that I can. It allows the ability to be confident. When a child can actually do something, they say, I did it. that is a building block to becoming more confident, to have that faith that I can do this and I can do that. And it's not all about doing, and this will be explored in the second talk. There is this moment of activity, and there's also these moments of more concentration where the children learn, for example, to use their hands in very maybe simple, fine motor skilled activities where they're learning to concentrate by doing these activities with their fingers. They could be making bread, for example, which you need attention and concentration to do these activities, or simply having a story read to them. So these are moments where a child is having that experience of, if we talk about it in relation to breathing. So breathing in experiences, which are those experiences that require more inner movement, concentration, and moments of expansion. So it's throughout the day, they have these moments of this action here. So movement and inner movement. And this goes to really help to strengthen those forces at work within the body. So when we work with rhythm, we are really structuring the intelligence and allowing it to unfold. If we have a lack of movement in our education or a lack of motivation, what it can equate to, and this is what I unfortunately observe sometimes when I see children that have this lack of motivation, almost to see how they are going to be in their adult life. If a child does not have motivation, it can potentially equate to a lack of purpose in adulthood. And no purpose, having absolutely no purpose in life, generally equals to not being happy. And when we have no purpose, we have no freedom, no direction, and no intention. So to have purpose, to have intention, is that ability to create, to think, to really activate those human faculties of doing, thinking, and feeling. So simply, our work as educators is to remove these obstacles, allow this education of perception, to participate in rhythm, to be able to perceive time and not to be out of time. Have a healthy sense of rhythm. The enemy of pedagogy is rushing. If we rush, no education can deeply unfold. So more intelligence when there is less instruction, more intelligence when the child plays more, less virtual time and more real time, if you want to put it very simply. So the key is don't rush infancy, don't rush this childhood. Like I said, it's such a very short time, it doesn't last forever. Allow it to unfold. Allow it to unfold, because over time it will develop spontaneously. Children naturally, this is what I've observed in my career as an educator for 20 years, that around 6 and 7 years of age, something happens within the child. They actually want to sit down and learn what adults know. It's like, I want to learn about your world, because before they've been totally immersed in this world, which is nature, because they just arrived, it's their body, they want to figure it out how it works. But then once it's mature, they go on to the next stage. So the first stage, we could call it the natural education. And then the second phase is the cultural education. They want to learn about other things. It's obvious they can't just be doing that forever. They wouldn't learn about culture because human beings are not natural beings. We're not natural in the sense that we evolve naturally. We need a cultural education, other human beings. And a good example to back this up is there was this Rodriguez, what he was called the Wolf Boy. You probably heard of this this boy that was found in this forest, and he'd been left there abandoned when he was about 3 years of age, and he was brought up by the wolves. And it was interesting that this human being, this child, didn't actually learn to talk, didn't learn to stand up, which just goes to show that they learn how to do it by imitating adults. So it's through the cultural education that we learn all these faculties that we have as human beings. If we're not with other human beings, we don't actually learn them. So that's very interesting in itself. Whereas animals are actually very different. They have this program. Wherever you put that animal, be it a dog, be it a cat, it will always be a dog and a cat wherever it is, because it's programmed. It doesn't have that freedom that the human being has. And that is why we are a species in our own selves. But we need to be with other human beings to really fully develop into individual, free-thinking human beings. Kind of deviating a little bit there. Yes, one more thing I wanted to say. If there is anybody that would like to continue this theme, if they have children, if they want to have pedagogical consultancy, this is something that I do, but at the moment I can be obtained for this dialogue at Alder Bridge, Steiner-Waldorf School, because that's where I am at the moment. So this is where I can be found if there is this desire to continue this conversation. If you're working with children, be it as parents, as teachers, and to work towards this art of education. Thank you for your attention and listening, and I will see you next month.